The Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, the modern classic bike on a budget. This motorcycle promises moderate performance in a stylish package, but can it keep that promise? And why, if you want one of those machines, right now could be the moment to get one. And with that, welcome to the freemilesmc. First of all, this is my personal motorcycle and I'm currently with it on a motorcycle surf trip through Europe, and this is my touring motorcycle. Let's start with the basics. The Royal Enfield is equipped with a 648cc parallel twin engine that is air and oil cooled. Also fitting for its style, this bike is equipped with a dual shock rear suspension that is preload adjustable, as well as right side up forks in the front. Also, this bike is not equipped with a LED headlight, which really fits the aesthetic of the bike in my opinion. All of this really underlines the classic look of this motorcycle with chrome at all the right places and Royal Enfield typical plastic hidden in the correct places where you don't notice it that much. Also, this motorcycle comes in many beautiful colors. I will list them right here. And the really beautiful thing is all those colors come mainly in the tank. Like, the tank is the main colored item, so if you want to change the whole look of the motorcycle, it's very easy. You just have to change the tank and the bike looks completely different. So I really like that design choice. Let's talk about the seating position. I am 6'5" and I sit very comfortably on this motorcycle. I really like that you don't have that much angle in your knee, but at the same time the bike really still goes through curves quite fine and it's really comfortable. Speaking of sitting on this bike, the position is comfortable. The seat is not. I have the touring seat on this bike, and that for good reason. The original seat feels like a donkey bag. It's not good, but the touring seat is really fine, and it's I think $80 as an extra, so it's still in the affordable range. But enough of the superficial specs, let's get this bike on the road. So I'm now out with my Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, this time without the surfboard, on the cross-country road, and I have to say this bike performs there quite well. It feels very tall, like I'm 6'5" and I feel quite tall in this machine. Also combined with the very thin handlebars, it gives you this old bike feeling. My comparison would be the Honda XL 500 from the 80s. It also has those very thin handlebars, but at the same time it's a modern bike. And you can really feel that, like the suspension feels good, and especially when going a bit quicker and then going through the curves, you feel those, like that this is not an actual old bike. You really feel those 30-40 years of motorcycle development basically. Like, as you can tell, it performs fine on the side of the tire, which I really like. Sometimes it can feel a bit wobbly because the suspension is, even though it feels very modern, is a mixture of kind of too hard and too soft sometimes. It's not a big deal unless you really want to carve some corners, but then maybe get a different bike, because overall this is a bike that's supposed to be kind of cruised on and it's supposed to be beautiful, but at the same time give you a little bit of this sporty feeling, and it definitely does that absolutely satisfying in the way that is legal on public roads. So I would say that's completely fine. Ooh. And it also handles bumps and the curves nice. And just while riding and while up and down shifting, especially at lower speeds or during city riding, you can really hear that this bike sounds quite nice. Like, even with the stock exhausts, I think it's one of the best sounding bikes I've ever ridden. it's really nice in that regard. I'm thinking about, because this is my own personal bike, if I put an extra exhaust on, because of course all Euro 5 norm bikes, you can hear that the Euro 5 norm, but like for Euro 5 norm this sounds really good. Like now that we get into this little bit of slower territory here, you can definitely, yeah, it's a beautiful sounding twin. And now I've taken the Interceptor 650 right here a bit off road, and the Interceptor 650 handles this surprisingly fine. Also, there's optional skid plate for the bike, and this goes really well, also because of the slightly bigger front wheel. The only problem that I have with the Interceptor 650 off-road is the ABS is not off-switchable, which would be quite cool. Because many people and many reviews always say, oh my god, this bike is quite capable when it comes to this, but that makes a huge difference. Because now, right now, you will see, yes, like no effect of the brakes really, as soon as you're on gravel road. So it would be really cool if that would be off-switchable. But apart from that, yeah, exactly. You ride into something that is not comfortable enough for you, and you basically cannot stop. So, but apart from that, on gravel roads, I mean, this is here quite sandy. It does really fine. Also, there are a lot of parts that you can modify on the Interceptor 650. I think that the Interceptor 650 also makes for an amazing base for a scrambler, and it's just a really fun bike all around, basically, because it does those things quite well. So what do I do now think of this motorcycle, the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650? Let's start with the power. I think probably a question that a lot of people have on their mind is, does this motorcycle have enough horsepower? And to that I can say, yes, it has 47 horsepower, and that is kind of the sweet spot where it's really enough. That's also the room for the A2 license in Europe, where you can just have a lot of fun with a bike on the street. Also, if you have friends that ride more potent motorcycles, this motorcycle can hang with them. Like, they will of course accelerate away from you, but not by that much. Like if your friends ride something that has the Yamaha 700 cc engine, like the MT-07, you can definitely keep up. Like, the thing will accelerate away from you slightly on the straights, but in the curves it's all good. Speaking of curves, the stock tires on this motorcycle kind of suck. They are okay, but you sometimes feel a bit off with them, and they tend to slide out a bit, which is just a weird feeling on a bike that has ABS and so on, that is supposed to be like on rails, which the handling apart from that actually is. So yeah, the tires are not the greatest. Like I already said, the suspension does the job. It's really fine, but it can be wobbly in the curves. It kind of adds to this old bike feeling. And if you used to ride older motorcycles, then it's completely like you expect it and it's fine. But at the same time, it can be a bit unnerving and scary. That is like, this now sounds bad, but you'll be fine with this motorcycle. The suspension is absolutely for street riding, completely fine, and also for having fun. And I think you could upgrade the suspension if you want to, but you don't need to. Also, the suspension handles off-road quite fine. Speaking of off-road, I really like how this motorcycle handles ruts, like how it just kicks up the bike and jumps over them. That probably is due to the 18-inch front wheel. Even though I'm happy with how this bike handles, this bike is quite top heavy. You can really notice that if you stand at a stop. For me it's no big deal because I'm quite tall and can really well hold the motorcycle. Also, the motorcycle feels like it's on rails. You need strong inputs to turn this motorcycle. Like, it doesn't just tip into corners like, for example, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. Combined with sometimes the wobbly suspension, it kind of gives you this old bike feeling, the kind that makes it feel old, but all the nice stuff of a modern bike is also there, like anti-hopping clutch, ABS, and still this feeling of safety in the curves that you wouldn't have on an actual old bike. So it kind of has the best of both worlds, even though it can feel a little bit weird. You know, like if you have ridden an actual old motorcycle and then you are on this thing and you shift down and you don't really feel that from the clutch because of the anti-hopping clutch, that's just a special feeling.
that's a bit weird to me. But I think for beginners that is really, really nice, because when I used to start riding on actual old motorcycles, there were a few moments where I messed up a downshift and almost wiped out. So that's, I think, good, but also, of course, you then don't really learn the habit of shifting down properly in front of a curve. So I think it's a double-edged sword a little bit for beginners. In general, I love the heaviness of all the contact points you have with the bike, like the blinkers, the clutch, the brake. All those levers feel quite heavy, but that is more my personal preference. I like that, and it's more in tone with how an actual classic bike would be. But at the same time, the levers can feel a bit cheap. They don't feel super cheap, but Royal Enfield can definitely do that better, how they already proved with the Meteor 350. Like, those levers on the Meteor 350 are absolutely amazing, and I would say those are mediocre. Overall, I would say this kind of motorcycle is really a lot about how it feels, and it feels definitely great. Also, this motorcycle has a lot of opportunity for customization, and those customizations, I think, probably really affect how you use this bike and how it really feels. Like, it's such a good base for something like a scrambler. You have already the other model, the Continental, that's kind of more a cafe racer that you can basically buy like that already, and also all the parts of that go on this. Then there is stuff like high-mounted exhausts, big bore kits that bore this up to 860 cc. Also wild stuff like a motorcycle surf mount, and I can tell you that really transforms how you use this bike and how it feels. My Interceptor 650 with the motorcycle surf mount just feels amazing, going from beach to beach, skipping all the big surf vans that look for parking. Just put the bike where the bicycles are supposed to park and catch some good waves. And this is basically how this feels.
Gonna fade away. I could be there behind you to pick the pieces up too late. I don't need you now, I'm alone. I can feel my life go by in slow motion. I need to know if you're afraid or when you start to fall for someone new. I need to know. Do you feel we're getting closer to the place where we began? Or are your feelings getting colder? 'Cause time is slipping through my...
Speaking of the motorcycle surf mount on this bike, I'm actually really happy that it works out that well, because that is something that Royal Enfield features in the commercial for this bike. And if you look at this commercial, you just think, well, that's probably bullshit, so you don't really believe it, but that shit actually works. Like, that is legit how it is in the commercial. You just go to a beach, grab the board and surf. Like, super cool. Except that that customizable part is not offered by Royal Enfield anymore themselves. Maybe they just didn't sell enough, but there are companies that offer a part like that for the Royal Enfield Interceptor. And I also think if you now would put something else on the bike, like theoretically a high-mounted exhaust, skid plate and knobby tires, it would transform the feeling completely again. This bike can kind of be what you want, and it can be that in this vintage costume. And like, if you would do the same to something like a Suzuki SV650, it would be super expensive, and you should just get a bike that's specialized for that. With this one, transforming a bike into something that you want would also be expensive, yes, but it still has this feel and look of a modern classic bike. But something I have to say, all the customizable parts for this motorcycle are quite expensive. Like whatever you can think of, you can basically already start at 500. Same goes for luggage. I have hard cases on the bike that are lockable because vintage looking soft bags don't bring you anything if you get your stuff stolen on a trip. So, and they're also quite cheap options there. But in general, the side bags and everything can be quite expensive. This motorcycle actually idles very high. And it still sounds really good. It would sound better if it would idle a little bit lower, and the reason why it idles so high is probably to meet Euro 5 norm, and if you want to make that better and let the bike run smoother, you'll probably have to give it a chip tuning. Also, something that I noticed that is maybe due to the bike running lean to meet Euro 5 norms is the bike runs hot very quickly. Not hot in the sense that it's bad for the bike. This bike was designed to really thrive in the conditions of India, so I think that's not a problem. But if you ride your bike not in motorcycle pants, it's really easy to burn yourself on that motorcycle. I rode other air-cooled motorcycles like that, and that was never an issue. But with this one, you really feel how hot it can be. And I think probably one of the main appeals of this motorcycle are the looks. And the looks are really amazing. This bike is gorgeous. It's gorgeous in all its colors. And there are even some colors that I would never think a motorcycle is gorgeous in. And it still looks amazing. Like there's, I think, a turquoise version, and it just looks beautiful. Also, some of the tank designs are so amazing. Like I really like the design I have. I didn't choose this because I bought this bike used, but there's a chrome version of the tank. Like, how good does this look? It's so cool. Also, many people will give you compliments on this bike. I regularly catch people taking photos of the bike. It's an enormous old dude magnet. Like, you will talk to a lot of guys in their 60s if you own this motorcycle. There are kind of two groups of people who ride this motorcycle, either old men or young people that try to be really hip. I think for the older guys, this is really a nice experience because it's just absolutely enough motorcycle to have fun, and it looks like the old motorcycles. Like, you will just have a good time. If you want to buy one like this, just go for it. With the younger people, I don't know. It's really nice if you want to enjoy a motorcycle in that way, but it kind of can trick you into just buying a bike because of how it looks and what other people will think of you if you are on that bike. And of course, that's kind of a valid reason to buy a motorcycle, but I would advise anyone who wants to buy a bike like that to rethink why you are getting a motorcycle. But of course, for me, the buying decision was also the looks were a factor, definitely. I more bought it because of its like overall capability thing. I think something that is also put into consideration when buying this bike is the price. And the price on this model is really amazing. This bike is between 5,500 and 7,500, depends on which equipment you have on the bike and in which color you get the bike. That is the price normally. So now we get to the reason why you should get a bike if you want a bike like this, or a beginner rider that doesn't own a motorcycle before this, maybe right now or in the next 18 months. Currently the price on those bikes here in Europe is dropping hard. The last summer in Europe really sucked. We had a lot of rainy weather, not a lot of motorcycles got sold. It was for the motorcycle industry a tough time. Also, especially when it comes to Royal Enfield, the KSR group, which distributes those bikes in Germany and Austria, just declared bankruptcy. And in the UK, the distributor for Royal Enfield, which I think is B-Moto, just changed, and they are getting out of stock with discounted motorcycles. In general, we currently live in a cost of living crisis and in a housing crisis. Many people have bought motorcycles that they are now selling with very low mileage. The prices are just really dropping because the new motorcycles are kind of competing with the used market, and it's just right now those bikes are falling in value quite a lot. Or have fallen in value quite a lot. I think this will stay like this for the next 12 to 18 months. So if you buy a bike like this now and keep it for 12 to 18 months until the market recovers, you can also then, if you get bored of the bike, really easily change to a different motorcycle if you then trade it in again. So I think right now is probably the best economic moment to get a bike like this. If you are a first-time buyer, if you sell another motorcycle to get this bike, of course, then it kind of sucks again because you don't get good money for your old bike. I think that will give you quite a good image of the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 if you consider this as a motorcycle. I am really happy with my motorcycle and I enjoy it greatly, also on my motorcycle surf trip. feel free to check that out. I will link it as the next video behind this. If you like what I do here on YouTube, please leave a like and a comment, and I also have the link to my other socials and my Patreon down in the description. And see you next time.